Not well. Test, test, test. Nicole, I'm going to do a sound test for you right now. I kind of need everyone. Hello, everyone. Sorry, it wouldn't be a Thursday if we didn't have some technical difficulties, despite all of testing and preparing ahead of time. So I'm just going to do a quick sound test with no one talking. Nicole, how are we doing? Sounds good. All right. So We are very excited tonight. My name is Sarah Danziger. I'm the education coordinator here. And I'm really excited that we get to welcome a different artist here every week for our Meet the Artist series. This is Brian Wallace behind me, our executive director. And I'm going to read you a little bio about Charles Biasiny Rivera. And then we'll let him get started. And I'll announce some of the follow-up speakers for the next few weeks at the end. Charles Biasiny Rivera is a Puerto Rican photographer, curator, and writer who was born in the Bronx, New York in 1930. He is best known for co-founding and the groundbreaking community-based organization Enfoco, which began as a collective of Puerto Rican photographers committed to producing exhibitions, publications, and public events that focused on the culturally based imagery emanating from the enclaves and neighborhoods of New York City, then a little farther upstate in the early 70s. Biasiny Rivera went on to become the executive director of Enfoco, which went on to publish Nueva Luz, an innovative journal of photographic portfolios of artists from diverse backgrounds. I could keep reading, but I could also let you take it from here. Charles, can we give a round of applause for Charles?
Very nice to see you all here. I guess this is a grouping of photographs I've done in the past few years. They're different from what I usually do. I really like to do straight black and whites. And I started mixing up with color just so to feel freer and to see how that would come out. As you go along in the years, and I've been in photography for a very long time.
How long?
multi. You come to realize that it's a hell of a lot more than just making pictures. There's a clarity that you have to get the fog out of your head to realize what you're doing. First you're very curious, then you get excited because you got some new equipment. But at a certain point, you feel that it's probably going to be your legacy. So you better take it seriously. And then you delve into it deeper and you become more involved with it. And you spend a lot more time with it. I was lucky because I was able to start off in the studios in Manhattan when I started, and they were wonderful guys. They just brought me right along, and I learned from very on. I started on a 14 by 17 studio camera, big baby. It was on rollers. At a studio on 57th Street. And the people who ran it, ran the shop, were really decent types. And I had just come out of the service, and they were very kind to me. So I learned very quickly the basics. I knew most of that, but I didn't have the commercial experience, which is entirely different. When you do it on your own, you just use whatever available time you could set aside from it. But if you get into it on a professional level, it's all consuming. very important. So that's how you're going to start measuring yourself. And you meet other photographers. It's very interesting because the people that I met at that time all have their own studios now. And I was never concerned about having a studio. I was concerned with what the what the photographs meant. At first you want to be proficient, you want to make sure everything's coming out sharp, um, and you master that. You master the tools just by using it, and making the mistakes. But I was lucky to get in at it at an early time, and working with professional studios in Manhattan. So I learned the business, and I thought that's what I was aiming for. That I wanted to get into the business. And some of the people that I knew that were doing the same thing did, in fact, become uh, uh, photographers and set up their own businesses. They're still there, but I never felt that photography was a place that I could just sit down and sell 4 pounds of bologna. Uh, uh, it really, the older and the more I was using it, uh, the more I realized I was asking of myself things that I never asked. The kind of dedication and involvement with it became more and more important. So I had to learn a lot. Luckily, I was in Manhattan, where there's hundreds of studios, and I was working in one studio that did catalogs. That is to say, they had 175 items to photograph in a short amount of time. So it taught me the lighting. It taught me how to work with a large camera. It was really a large camera. It was on rollers. And once I got all the basics down, and I was doing a lot of processing, understanding all that business, um, I saw that I wasn't really in photography as a person that wanted to set up a shop. I liked the whole idea that what I was working with uh, was the professional level. Uh, when you get a job in, you know how to handle it. Uh, and I did that. I learned all the lighting, and I learned all the equipment, um, and the processing. But more important, I realized that I really didn't want to set up a shop. I didn't want to sort of graduate and become a professional photographer that operated a studio. I like the idea that I was using photography for a more professional expression rather than just being good at what you're doing, taking good photographs, clear, well positioned. It was only after I came out of the service, the Air Force, that I realized that what I really wanted to do is use it as a very personal way of leading my life. And that's what it became. It became something that I was doing for myself. Sure, I could earn some money from it, but it was more important that I gave myself the liberty to follow what I wanted to do in photography. That was very, very settling for myself. so I wasn't running around looking for jobs. Uh, I did. I knew everyone by that time, uh, and it was easy for me to get jobs. So it wasn't a question of a business, but it was a question of what am I going to do with a camera, really? I mean, everybody takes pictures. How the picture is going to be any more important than other pictures? That really led me to a confrontation to myself. Oh, you want to be a businessman, earn a living, like studio photographers. What, honey? Go to work. I'm sorry, I'm going to spend another 40 minutes discussing my life. So I took a lot of pictures. Learned along the way, became proficient. Fortunate to work with some very, very good photographers as their assistants. So I learned a great deal. And then realized I wasn't in the business of photography. It was more of a really personal examination of what I could do with this funny little machine. One of the, that was really important because you spend 7 years learning professional photography, and say, well, that's going to be what's going to become successful in your life. But the real success is when you understand that it's much more personal of what you do. I'll get on with the photos. These photos were taken in San Juan, Puerto Rico, at a very long time ago. That's my daughter. She's a grown woman now. And it was a big discovery that photography went beyond what I thought it was going to be, which is successfully taking pictures, earning a living. But that was not rewarding enough. The pictures that I liked were pictures that were happening in my life, and trying to pinpoint those moments and realizing that something's going on and maybe that should be registered. So that's how I started using. These are all done with a $14 camera. And you can't get a sharp image with a $14 camera, but I like the softness of what they were doing with it. It centered more about the sense of the photograph rather than the technical aspect of the photograph. I had that down pretty well. But I like the idea that I could use anything that you could put film in and come up with something rewarding, interesting, and something to follow and learn from. That's my daughter on the right side. She's a grown woman now. So these are photographs in Puerto Rico. The first time I went there, it's where my folks are from, but I had never been to the island. And I lived in San Juan, old San Juan, and these are some of the gentlemen and folks that lived there. Um, I was just struck by how they were so self-contained. Uh, they were complete. There was no question who they were, and I thought that was so valuable because that's always a big effort in your life. You're never sure about what's going on, or whether you're actually involved in something that's important or not. And you don't know how much time you're going to use on it. So I started with this funny little Diana camera. I used 120 film in it. And you can't get any sharper than that. But I'm amazed that I got that much out of it. This gentleman is one of the many wonderful individual characters that you could meet on the boulevard or at the various squares in San Juan, old San Juan. And they were such perfectly wonderfully contained, whole. No question about who they were within the population or not. Yeah.
I got it.
Okay.
You can.
I'll do that.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So it's all a discovery for me. I mean, I had never been to the island. My folks are from the island. But I didn't know what the island really was, and what the society really was. So I went discovering everything, and these wonderful 90-year-old individuals that can still do the Roomba startled me. And with the vitality of a young person. They don't lose that, which is part of the culture. It's a wonderful reinvestment of themselves. You know, they don't become someone else. They're very proud of who they are. And the fact that she could be 92 and still do the Roomba was, to me, phenomenal. I used to be a good dancer, by the way. Thank you. And this, I would wander all the time, had a camera with me. And wherever I went, as soon as I see a camera, I'm a tourist. So I'd say hello in Spanish, and they were surprised that I knew the language a little bit because the pronunciation was all right. And they were starting to be very giving, as opposed to being startled or rejecting you because you were intruding on their lives. They didn't mind you were taking their picture. They liked the idea that you were taking their picture. They were very proud of who they are. And I didn't know anything about it. I was really dumb. I know what my family was. Oh yeah, we're Puerto Rican. But yeah, you're Puerto Rican in the USA. That's different than being Puerto Rican on the island, where everybody is Puerto Rican. You know, it's a whole sense. You start to begin this whole sense. Oh, maybe there's more feeling to it than just what I read in newspapers. More discovery, and it was a terrific. I think it was 2 or 3 years I spent the first time I went. It was very, very rewarding. Huh? Okay. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. This was a group of us. Some of them were we formed an organization called Enfoco, which means in focus in Spanish. And all we wanted to do was to get together. I've been working in studios all this time, becoming a professional photographer. But most of them were using the camera as a sort of a way to, I guess they were doing the same thing. They were investigating themselves, where they went, who they met, etc. And they thought the idea of forming an organization of us was great. So they said, yeah, count me in. And so all these fellows became photographers. Maybe there's only 2 left now, counting myself. Passed on. This was an exhibition in Newburgh. I started wandering up and down the state to see where we were represented. And I brought an exhibition with me and approached the city or the town and said, you know, I'm interested in showing these. You have a big population of Latinos here. Oh yeah, they thought that was pretty good. We don't have any money though. I said, that's all right. I'll do the photographs, I'll do the mounting, and I'll do the transportation. I was living in New York City at the time. So I did that. I met the people there. They were very nice. They were a social agency, sort of a freelance social agency. And so when I told them I was a photographer, they was, oh yeah, well, what, take our picture? Yeah, well, I'll take your picture. But more so, I'd like to show what our lives are like, how we see most of the world, how we reflect on it. Most of the pictures are taken in New York. The one on the right is a wonderful old fellow in Puerto Rico, and he earns his living by taking care of pets, your pet, and also he cuts lawns. And what he's holding is a machete, and that's his lawnmower. He's a very old guy, and he gets on his knees, and with this long sword, he just cuts the grass very slowly, no rush, but he does a very fine job. I was pretty amazed about that. And the fact that he would hold still for a photograph, he was a stranger to me and wasn't, afraid of the camera or suspicious or anything. He really gave of himself. And that was wonderful. I started working in the public schools in New York City, where I went to school. And there were many more Puerto Ricans in the schools than there were when I was going to them. And I was just taken with how they dressed, their personal image of themselves. Very proud of how they look. there's no money involved in this because they didn't have much money. But they managed to find articles of clothes, and they always had an attitude of self-worth of who they were. Young kids. I was really impressed with how he carried himself. Hanging out in the schools, I would always get permission, of course. But the kids didn't know what I was there for. Why was I taking pictures? They thought they were, they were looking for a criminal. you know. But, I spoke to them in Spanish, and it was cool. Except we were developing. This is the early work of Enfoco, which was a group of 3 of us. Yeah, 3 of us that got together and were photographers and decided that we should exhibit the work that we were doing. Because no one else was doing it, and certainly not the people, not the type of people that were in the photographs. That was us. We were really photographing ourselves. And the schools is a great place. I remember going to school, it was all different then. But you have to assume a persona. You develop your persona, your sense of confidence, how you can present yourself. And the people that worked there absolutely had no idea what I was doing or why I was there. But they all became my friends. Well, schools in New York have a reputation. And so there's a certain degree of security that has to take place, especially if you're working late there.
How old were you at this time? How old were you compared to the students?
I was a grown man. I have been working in a lot of studios. I knew a lot of the photographers, but I really wasn't interested in working in the studios. I wasn't interested in photography as a business. I didn't want to have a business out of this thing that I was so involved with. It was very personal to me. And I was learning all the time. And in fact, what I was doing out there was trying to find myself. I went to the same schools that they did, but it was all different. It was a different time. They dressed differently. Their attitudes were entirely different. There was much more substance to them. And they were proud to show who they were. Whereas we felt that we were delinquents. We never had that surety of ourselves. Once they understood I was a Latino and that I wasn't trying to make money on them or sell anything to them, they opened up. You know, they didn't have to hide anymore, or they didn't have to pretend with me anymore. So they became very comfortable with me. I would speak to them in Spanish. That's the fastest way to let them know that you're not trying to use them for something. Because no one ever came to the schools and just started taking photographs of individuals unless they were professionals coming in, hired by some organization to photograph a sample of New York education, which is always a sterile photograph of something that really has no feeling to it. But I really was looking for that. That fellow is really proud of who he is. He stands strong, and he's not questioned about who he is. And that was the thing I responded to, his self-acceptance. And they were always goofing off all the time. I remember I did the same thing.
Excuse me, can you tell us what school this is, or did you say that already? The school, which one?
Benjamin Franklin on 116th Street off Lexington Avenue. Yeah.
Would that be considered the South Bronx, or is that?
No, that's in Manhattan.
Still in Manhattan?
That's in Manhattan. I went to school in Manhattan. It was later that we moved to the Bronx.
Is this your school where you went to school?
No, it isn't. It's another school. Yeah. Where I went to school, there was no school. It disappeared. They had a big housing project there. So it vanished.
You chose to work at a school because of the young people, because of the age of the people, or because of the school system, of the institution?
I was really interested in what was happening to us,
People,
Puerto Ricans,
Puerto Ricans.
and how we were being affected by the society around us and how we responded. We developed our own styles, clothing, music. We responded by creating, a little San Juan in Manhattan.
Is this the area they used to call Spanish Harlem?
Yes,
The area where Bruce Davidson did his work, East 100th Street?
that's right. That's right. Way before Bruce.
Way before.
Way before
Same
Bruce.
area.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Principles. It just I'm so I'm so moved by how they could hold up themselves, with all the crap that's being thrown at them, without any real support on or understanding, but they hold on to themselves, and within their group, within their block, that's who they are. They don't hold their heads down low. They're very proud of who they are. And that was a time, this is back in the 60s, I think, when the parents started to organize, and they would march in front of the schools with signs, and newspapers would photograph them And it became known that maybe we needed a different bunch of teachers that could respond to who we were. They were responding to like we were the typical student everywhere, but we're not. I mean, we come from a very strong culture, and we have a sense of ourselves in a certain dignified way. That's what gives us security and strength. So they got involved in demonstrations. There's a parent that was demonstrating because they wanted a better education for the children. That was very difficult at that time. Teachers were teachers. They were professionals, and they had a way of teaching. They weren't involved with racism or anything other than teaching the curriculum. And they went home at 3 o'clock and did their job, and it was just a job. That was one of the happiest days. That's graduation day. Where the parents come and the school is open, and they could just walk around and talk to the teachers and talk to each other, take their pictures. That was very enjoyable for them. The sense of themselves, their own sense of themselves. Nobody told them to look like that. They just decided that they were beautiful people and they should be dressed up in all this fluff and beautiful clothing. I love that. That they weren't overpowered, but they were able to hold on to themselves with a strong belief of who they are. I was very impressed. I was really very impressed. When I went to school, there wasn't that sense of certainty and security within us. You know, we were either delinquents or, straight-nosed and saying yes, ma'am, yes, sir, to everyone. But the teachers came around too. They started to understand that you couldn't be this sort of strict governance, that you had to understand that this was really a different culture that you're talking to. It wasn't easy getting into these schools. I had to go to the Department of Education, show them a portfolio of professional work, told them that that's what we were interested in, because we had formed a group of photographers under the name Enfoco. And we wanted to investigate what was influencing our children through this type of education they were having. So we wanted to have more of a say-so in that, more of a questioning of that. Everyone is not the same. There was always a police presence. There was never a police presence when I went to school. I wanted to show what a school looked like in the city. These large crowds that are forming, and those are parents who are very interested in what's going on in the schools. That never took place before. No one listened to parents. The teachers were in charge, and the school organization was in charge. But the parents of the kids became very involved, and that was a big change. Now, I went outside of the city. Newburgh was I was living up here about that time. Not living here, but part-time. I'd spend 3 days here, 4 days in the city. I bought a barn, turned it into a house. So I wanted to see what was going on in the schools up here. And what difference was it from the city? Bilingualism wasn't apparent when I was in school. But so many Spanish-speaking families moved into the city that it was important that to understand. It's sort of like when the Italians first came over. They didn't speak English. The kids did, but the parents didn't. And this is Newburgh, I believe. And that kind of involvement we didn't have. A sort of humane way of dealing with children. You know, understanding that I didn't even know where Puerto Rico was when I was in school. I knew it was an island somewhere. Very helpful to see that there's lots of places. I saw that I wasn't going to become a professional photographer in the way of earning a living at it. I spent too much time and effort on a subject. I didn't sell very much. And that's what I decided that, well, don't expect to earn anything from this. And that's what I decided to do things a little different. I was a pretty strict black and white photographer. And for me to let loose and decide to use pigments on a black and white photograph was a big deal. It was a big turnaround for me. I was letting down certain restrictions. But I realized that those are very natural progressions. The fact that I wanted to do that, I thought, oh, that's silly stuff you're doing on black and white photographs. So I said, I like that silly stuff. And that's all I had to say. I approve of you, Charlie.
When did you start doing this?
60s.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
From the 60s?
No, 1990.
93?
Yeah, the rephotography,
What?
the reusing the images you get in the.
Oh, the coloring. Yes, right. That happened much later on. Yeah. I had already had the experience to really have my own shop, but I was never interested in using it that way, using what I did in photography that way. And this is what, I mean, for me to do this to a black and white photograph was extraordinary. I was such a stickler, purist. So I really gave myself permission. It's all right, Charlie. You can do what you think is real. Although it looks like a fantasy, but for me, it's real. The effect of religion on me since a kid was very strong. I didn't know what to do with it. I certainly didn't want to follow the traditional paths, but I knew the value of it. Many of these photographs are taken from my wanderings. This one's somewhere off the Bowery in a bar. And I was just simply wandering the neighborhoods, taking time off from earning a living. I would just hang out in a neighborhood that if they see you come in 2 or 3 times, you're all right. At first, they just think you're a government inspector, especially if you're carrying a camera.
And the poetry, is that your poetry?
Sorry?
The poetry that's written on the
Oh,
photograph?
yes, that was the other thing. I was a purist, which is one of the reasons I was using black and white photography. So I I gave permission to myself. It's all right, Charlie. You don't have to argue with this. Do it. Yeah, it's funny. Yeah, it's silly. Well, I don't know. It really carries the sense of it. And I was pleased with that. I didn't think I was being hokey with it because I truly respect the photograph and the truth of it, of what it represents.
And the writing was yours?
Yes, I managed to start writing. That's another thing I allowed myself. This is my father. He was a merchant seaman. I'd see him about 17 times during the year. He'd always be at sea. That was during the war, Second World War. Always rolled his own cigarettes. Bull Durham. I respected him greatly. And I also gave myself permission to do this sort of strange stuff on a photograph, which is totally against my principles. You have to be this way with a photograph. No, you have to do the way everybody else is doing it. But I just started scribbling and inventing it as I went along. And I didn't mind it. And I didn't feel I was betraying my trust.
What do angels mean to you?
Angels?
Yeah, because all these photographs have references to angels.
That's a very good observation. I was always very religious, but as an individual, I didn't join anything. And I always felt the power of the great power, the nondescriptible. It's not a word. Uh, the one that you can't describe quite accurately because it exists within yourself. And letting myself do this was like being a traitor. What? Any colors on a black and white photograph? No, purists never do that. But I felt so good at the results that I accepted it and allowed myself to do it. Oh, that's very interesting. I didn't have any art training, so I would use makeup, women's makeup. Yeah, well, it's right handy. Take my mom's lipstick, ruining it, but I got pigment out of it. So I thought, I started looking around, went to an art store. I did actual art store. I didn't know I was messing with art.
You mentioned that you weren't selling a lot of pictures, so how were you supporting yourself and your family if you had them?
I was freelancing assistant. I could walk into any shop, any studio, and put in the 8 hours, and it didn't matter the equipment that we're using. I had taught myself to keep up with the equipment. I couldn't afford any of that equipment, but the studios could afford the equipment. So I learned all about the strobes, the new strobes coming in, the thing that creates this immense light at a zenth of a second. And I got really involved with it. And once I started doing that, I said, well, I can color it if I want. I had to give myself permission because I was sort of breaking one of my restrictions. And I was learning that certain restrictions prevent you from moving forward. And you have to really allow yourself the freedom if you feel that what you're doing is true. And I felt that I was doing truism. I'm not an artist. I didn't know how to use them, but I tried to use them as much as I could to embellish the photograph beyond a reality into a fantasy. And that was all right. Most of our lives are fantasy. We depend on fantasies, intuitions, presumptions, and allowing yourself to let go of those restrictions that you taught yourself. Nobody said you can't do that. In fact, I say, well, that's not honest. But I finally let myself accept the fact that I was enjoying it. And
Read the writing. Can anyone read? I can't read the writing.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm glad you mentioned that. Writing. I love to write, but I didn't have the schooling for it. So you could do poetry. You don't need schooling for poetry. So seek the winds that call your name to make free the sacred self. Arise to the glory of you, that you may know the rapture. So I loved it. I just said, oh, look, I could write things that don't sound silly. And they might even be important.
I guess they're very tiny, very small.
The actual photograph,
Yeah.
they're 11 by 14s.
11 by 14?
Yeah.
They look like voted cards, like holy cards.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent. Because that's what influenced me. I had gone to Puerto Rico, and I love to go into churches. And there, in the churches, I found literature too, and drawings. They were silly drawings, but I said, you could do that. It's all right to do it. Look, it's in the church. I gave myself permission to start using pigments and design, which I didn't have any training for. And photography is such an exacting science that you think you're hemmed in by it all. No, you must use that kind of film. No, what are you doing with that camera? You can't use that camera. You have to have this camera. So there was a lot of restrictions that I was feeling in exploring this avenue, which I never thought of as ART. But it was a way that would explain a lot of stuff that was happening to me. It wasn't the prayers that were to ABC, but it was the release that you don't have to be rigid in your own work. You can put color on photographs, nothing wrong, because the respect is there. I wouldn't do it unless I was sure I could finish something that I was proud of. That took a long time. So I was very happy with all these colors. Pardon? Yeah, sure. You take a slug of water. Allowing myself to write something dealing with the photograph was a big breakthrough, because it was maybe profane, maybe a sellout. You're not pure. I said, it's okay. It's okay. If you don't make a fool of yourself, it's okay. So I allowed myself to do this, which 4 years before that, I would never even think of it. What happens if you want to become a professional photographer? You have to learn the trade. And most of that is equipment, using the equipment, learning the lingo, getting a salesman. It's a business. None of that ever impressed me. It was the invention of it that I was really interested in. And if it could touch me on my feelings, then it was really, really important, without any plans. I mean, it wasn't anything I thought out. I just started doing it, and then I was pleased with it. And if I was pleased with it, I would accept it. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes. Be strong and do not betray your soul. Carry your light to illuminate your destiny. Rejoice, for you are part of the mystery. Thank you. Thank you. And I'm not a writer. I'm not. I just gave myself permission to do it and to show it. and not be embarrassed by it. I like to go into the schools where a lot of these folks are gathered. But before I did that, I was going to parties, teenage parties. I knew a family who had a couple of teenagers, and they would throw a party. And I would just come along and hang out. At first, you with a newspaper? No, I'm just taking pictures. Nothing big, just taking pictures. So I would hang out at parties. I'd go to teenage parties. I knew the parents, and the parents had friends, and they saw what I was doing, and say, "I'm going to be throwing a party, and you're invited to bring your camera." I'd always give them not these. These are all one of a kind. But I would always give them a black and white of what I was shooting. Stay true to your struggle, for it is the salvation and the light of your path. For the salvation and the light of your path. Heed not the fallen, for they are the children of the lost. And, where do you pull that out of yourself? Where do you give yourself permission to do that? That's a floozy thing you're doing there. Color, messing around. Good black and white photography is straight. Well, I learned pretty much after I came out of the service that you decide what's straight. As long as you believe in it, that's the test. If you just
when you paint this one that we're looking at right now, somebody's pushing a cart, they have a burden, they're pressing up and going uphill with wings. I feel like, I'm a black and white photographer too, but I feel like you have really evolved in your black and white world in creating what you really wanted to say in the work by painting and by adding these elements of wings and by the writing. It really feels, and I want to say that I feel these are stronger. It's stronger work than the plain black and white without the drawing, without the painting, without the element of poetry. I don't know what you think, if you feel you still belong to that purist movement, that you feel that this really says more. You feel that the black and white could have said what you wanted, what you're saying here?
Well, it was originally all in black and white. I just turned it into color by the addition of coloring agents. But all the photographs were black and white. I had never shot color. I didn't like what color looked like. It always seemed so unreal.
To me, it seemed the black and white, you were investigating and getting to know your culture, and then you turn the camera inside yourself
Yes.
and seeing what you were about.
Yeah.
And it's two different kinds of photography.
No,
Yeah.
I think the black and white was also turning inside. What I thought when you did your black and white, you were also taking what you felt and trying to, and looking at what the world presented.
Yeah.
Trying to project what you felt.
Oh, yes. And I was very strict about that. I wouldn't do color because I felt the color was so bizarre. It didn't really, it's not real. It's supposed to be real. So I'd rather make the illusion, add the color, and not make a pretense that it's like a color photograph. I wanted the combination of the illusion and the security of the photograph itself. And that all came about as a surprise. Didn't make any plans for that. But by that time, I was a professional photographer, could manage any studio I was working in and any bit of the equipment. I was pretty good.
So did you show these pictures to anyone? Did you exhibit them?
No,
No reaction?
no, they were all,
Charlie exhibited them at the Lehigh University Gallery in the 90s. Remember?
oh, yes, that's right. And the Lehigh galleries.
Yeah, with the curator, Ricardo Rivera.
Yeah, right. Yeah, but that was black and white. I showed, they were all black and whites.
Showed these.
Did I show these? My wife knows more than I do.
I was there.
Come on back. Yeah. You will be the bearer of the new. Anoint your soul, for you will suffer a profane world. Be intimate with your soul and beware those that would diminish it. I like putting those words together. I never would allow myself before to do that. Mix the two. Breaking rules. Not real. I like not being real. Mainly because it's really a truth that I'm following and trying to show that's not just something I whipped up while I was having my cornflakes. Allowing myself to apply color to a black and white photograph. Big breakthrough. To write something that I thought was worthy enough to associate it with. Huge difference in accepting that. But I felt good about it.
Who are you talking to in your poetry? There's a you, and you're kind of giving advice or delivering some kind of truth and perception, but who are you speaking to?
Essentially to myself. That's who I'm addressing. To allow myself, to give myself freedom. It's all right to do that. Put the color on there. Write silly stuff. But make sure it's your personal truth. That you believe in it. And that's a big deal for me. I was ready to do straight black and whites, which I still do. But I always think I'll go back to them and readdress them and see why I took that picture, where that takes me. So it wasn't enough that I took a picture. It's for me to realize why I took that picture and why I separated it and wanted to do something with it. Because it,
Is your photography, like your poetry, basically addressed to yourself?
yes, at all times. I'm not talking to the world. I'm talking to myself and allowing myself to say that and to put up or shut up. Oh, that's silly. What are you throwing? all that stuff on a good black and white photograph. No, that was a big breakthrough for me. Giving myself the right to do it was the big breakthrough.
So Charlie, you would agree that you say that every photograph is a self-portrait.
It's an expression of secrets that I can't say to anyone. But this gives me a platform to do it if I believe in it. That's a big deal. And for how long will you feed me until you no longer hunger? And when I'm afraid, will you stay with me? I will be with you until your fear is gone. And if I cry, will you comfort me? I will hold you for as long as I have light. That's a father and son photograph. It all seems like it has something to do with religion. In a way, it does. But my religion is a very free-floating thing. It's really my honesty that I'm talking about. And do you give yourself that kind of honesty? Do you allow yourself to be that blatant, to make a statement and saying things like that and presenting imagery like that? And it was a real big deal for me to allow me to do it, because it broke my mold. I was a straight black and white photographer. It allowed me something that I didn't allow myself. And I like the idea that I could throw in some stuff in words, because I think in terms like that. I don't speak in terms like that, but I think in terms like that. My feelings are like that. Burn the tears that singe the suffering heart. Regale in the newness of your being. Prepare the songs of faith for the beautification to come. You know, I can hardly say that to myself and have someone hear what I was saying. So for me, it was a big breakthrough, just as an artist.
Do you see these at all as, I mean, you didn't show them much, it sounds like. You showed them at Lehigh, right?
Yeah.
But when you were making them, were you showing them to other photographers or other artists? So it was a very private journey for you.
Terribly private.
And for that reason, do you feel like it was like a journal of sorts, or is it just your, I mean, it's such an intense private world that you were breaking these bounds, these boundaries, these barriers?
Yeah, you said it. You said it. To give myself that permission was a big deal. I studied hard, worked hard to make photographs, to learn how to do them in an acceptable manner. But at some point, I wanted to do something else with it.
What about the people in your they see them? Did they comment on them?
Oh yeah, they loved it. They loved the idea that you showed freedom. You know, everybody's got that secret stuff in them. Don't talk to anybody. You know, they'll take you away. But art deals with that. It really deals in the breaking of certain censorship. You always restrict yourself from doing certain things. You don't know why, but those are the rules. And I never gave myself permission before to break the rules. But I had this real feeling of, it's all right, Charlie, you could do that. You're not selling out anything. It's your real truth. And that's what I used as a guide. As long as I was doing my own truth, I would follow it.
Can you say a little bit more about the Enfoco Collective and how it gave everybody certain kinds of permission? How did you work together? Did you have regular meetings when you show work to one another?
No, we did that in a pretty standard way. You know, you throw your prints out there and you ask, oh, what's that about? See what the photographers are going to say. And you could see all the restrictions. You know, well, that looks like a, you know, life photograph. Real. But there's a whole bunch of stuff that you're leaving out. All the lines don't have to be straight. You know, they could bump into each other. They could be round. They could be halfway. Who says they have to be lines as lines? And you live your life like that. Oh no, you can't do that. Why can't you do that? Well, it's not done. Not proper. And so, wonderful thing about this, because it's creation, and I didn't hinder myself. I said, it's all right to do it. So it comes out the way it comes out. It's really all I can do. I can make it a different way, more commercial, more exciting in a way it's designed, different colors that are more usual. But I said, no, then you're not doing what you're thinking or feeling. So if you're dealing in that whole sense of art, funny word, it's bringing the essence that you as an individual have. And everybody has that. Okay, you have it, but will you show it? Oh, no, I don't have to show it. No, I'm embarrassed to do that. People think I'm funny, silly, absurd. Yeah, they will. But how do you feel about it? Man, I think I'm right in the center. I'm really letting myself have it. And that's one of the things that kept me going on it. I said, no, that's not silly. That's really your reality. Where did it come from? It came from you. Who told you to do that? I did. Most of the time, especially if you think you're going into photography as a business, you don't ever ask yourself questions like that. It'll hinder your progress in earning a buck. So then, you know, ART. So what? So that's what they mean. It's that essence that they're talking about. Nobody said it exactly. It's your own personal truth that you're allowing that makes the difference. If I turned it upside down, I'd still show it. I mean, I'd be a little wacko, but I'd do it. The fact is, if you give yourself the permission to follow what you think is the center, then you've really released yourself from the burden of what everyone else might think. And you're doing it for yourself. And that's giving yourself permission. And that's what every artist has to do. Oh, I'm a commercial artist. I have to earn a living. Go earn a living. But let me see what you do at night. You know, let me see what you scribble. Because that's where you really are. The other thing is a profession. You become technically proficient. And you earn your living. And then by the time you die, you're screaming and yelling, I didn't finish. That's not the stuff I wanted to do. Yeah, but you had $100,000. It didn't make a difference. And it doesn't make a difference because you're dealing with something that's an intangible that you can't measure. You can't plug yourself into something and say, oh, that's good. That's 45% good. You've got to give yourself permission if you believe it. And the big problem is, do you believe it? Otherwise, you know, you feel like an ass. I think I'm at the end. Oh! Retrieved. If I am to love you, all that is me is before you. If you are with me, it is as the first breath of my life, of my living. You are the eyes of my heart, and I tremble the touch of the softness that is us. Valentine's Day. Wow. One more. Hold on, one more. Now you know that's me. I'm the child God who is ever reborn. I am the newness of life for whomsoever believes. You have only to suffer unto me, and I will bring you hope. Walk with me, that you may find the path to the center. There you will hear the glory of your innocence. Thank you very much.
For joining us. That was so special. A lot of really sage advice in there. I wanted to announce that next week we'll have two artists, Juan Madrid and Veronica Melendez. They'll have some books and zines and prints with them as well, which will be really nice. Juan was actually the old digital lab manager, so maybe you met him at some point. Other things, we have memberships. If you like what we're doing and wanna become part of it, we have a digital lab. We just purchased a beautiful new building down the street that we can't wait to welcome you all in, and we'll have a little bit more breathing room in the future. Thanks for your patience earlier, and thank you to Charles, thank you for Betty, and thanks to Nicole. All right, have a good night.